words, another typical Monday for Hamas. Also tonight, major breakthroughs in President Trump's plan to denuclearize the entire Korean peninsula. The administration is now outlining a plan to disarm the North Korean dictator. Now, this comes as Kim Jong-un is making yet another major concession. He is now inviting the Western media to watch the destruction of his nuclear test site. We'll tell you the details. And a stunning report from the Hill's John Solomon, you won't believe this story tonight, on a new conflict of interest for the special counsel, Robert Mueller. And guess what? It involves a Russian billionaire who's now part of the Russia investigation, plus even more evidence that the special counsel, Robert Mueller's investigation, is literally imploding before our eyes, and major new developments tonight about the FBI potentially planting a mole inside the Trump campaign. I told you this was a busy news night. You can't make this stuff up. Now, this falls in line with everything else we have been exposing right here on this program. Is it part of a pattern? We'll analyze. And also tonight, the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, Trey Gowdy, they are saying the DOJ is trying to discredit their investigations with anonymous sources and leaking. Sit tight, buckle up. We have a lot to cover in tonight's breaking news opening monologue. All right, the president has continued to pile up one massive win after another, ahead, of course, of these all-important midterm elections in 2018 this year. Now, Trump now has an undeniable, amazing record of promises kept and accomplishments. And by the way, every Republican can now run on the things that he's done, and this can no longer be ignored. Now, today in Israel, the president kept a major campaign promise. Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, Steve Mnuchin, other top administration officials unveiled the new embassy in Israel's true capital. It's called Jerusalem. Now, the president emphasized the significance of this historic moment in a video message to the audience. Take a look.
Today, Jerusalem is the seat of Israel's government. It is the home of the Israeli legislature and the Israeli Supreme Court and Israel's prime minister and president. Israel is a sovereign nation with the right, like every other sovereign nation, to determine its own capital. Yet for many years we failed to acknowledge the obvious, the plain reality that Israel's capital is Jerusalem. On December 6, 2017, at my direction, the United States finally and officially recognized Jerusalem as the true capital of Israel. Today we follow through on this recognition and open our embassy in the historic and sacred land of Jerusalem. And we're opening it many, many years ahead of schedule.
And the Israeli Prime Minister, a man who I've said for many years has incredible moral clarity, Bibi Netanyahu, he also attended this monumental event. And President Trump, he talked about him keeping his word and his promises. Take a look.
Last December, President Trump became the first world leader to recognize Jerusalem as our capital. And today, the United States of America is opening its embassy right here in Jerusalem. Thank you. Thank you, President Trump, for having the courage to keep your promises. Thank you, President Trump, and thank you all for making the alliance between America and Israel stronger than ever.
Now, there's a reason the Prime Minister and the Israelis are so thankful for President Trump's bold actions. You see, for decades, we've had one U.S. president after another promising over and over and over and over and over again that they were going to open an embassy in Jerusalem, but they never delivered. They repeatedly broke their promises. Now, what we continue to see over and over again is that what the president says he's going to do, he actually does. By the way, it's good politics, too. Keep your word. Now, what happened today in Jerusalem is history in the making. Even Senator Chucky Schumer, he couldn't help but praise President Trump. And he said this move is long overdue, and it was. And, of course, not one single Democrat bothered to attend this event. God forbid they ever support the president, even just a little bit. Remember, Joe Manchin tried to stand for a second. Anyway, now while Israel is celebrating this historical development, Hamas predictably carrying out violent, bloody protests that have led to the deaths now of over 50 Palestinians, over 1,000 injured. Now, these Hamas-inspired protesters, they've been setting things on fire, throwing firebombs and stones at Israeli soldiers. The Israeli military is also saying that 3 of the Palestinians were killed after trying to plant a bomb. The violence is horrific. It's evil in our time. Nobody wants to see it, but it's all too predictable. the media rarely reminds you that the Hamas charter calls for the destruction of the state of Israel. Now, keep in mind, as we have reported right here on this show, Hamas actually pays the families of terrorists that get killed trying to inflict pain and suffering on Israel and Americans, too. Now, Israel has a right to defend itself, just like Israel has the right for Jerusalem to be their capital. Now, Israel is not the only place where the Trump administration is making serious progress. More developments as it relates to North Korea and Kim Jong-un and what is now the making yet of another concession ahead of his meeting and his summit with President Trump next month in Singapore. Yep, Little Rocket Man is now inviting journalists from all over the world to watch as his country will dismantle their nuclear test site and facilities. Even more evidence that President Trump's peace through strength policy is more than working. Now, you think about this. We have gone from North Korea firing missiles over Japan, threatening Guam, threatening the continental U.S., Hawaii, and the rest of the world. And now we've got Little Rocket Man walking across the DMZ, meeting with South Korea's president, releasing 3 American hostages just last week, and it didn't involve any U.S. cash or cargo planes full of cash. And now the West is invited, and the media is invited, to watch and witness the dismantling of Kim Jong-un's test site. But don't worry, I'm sure the media is talking about Russia, Russia, or Stormy, Stormy. There's one key factor in all of this, and that is the president, President Trump. He forced North Korea's hand. His policy is continuing to work. And tonight we're also learning new details about some of the issues that will come up at this June meeting. National Security Advisor John Bolton is saying many issues are on the table. Let's take a look.
On the denuclearization side itself, that means all aspects of their nuclear program. Clearly, the ballistic missile program, as with Iran, with the intention of being a delivery system for nuclear weapons, that's got to go. I think we need to look at their chemical and biological weapons programs as well. The president's going to raise other issues, the Japanese abductees, the South Korean citizens who were kidnapped.
Talking about trust but verify. All right, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who's been meeting with Kim Jong-un, he met him twice. He's also laying out some of the details about a possible plan for the North Korean and the Korean Peninsula to literally denuclearize the whole area. It would be amazing if it happened. Watch this.
This will be Americans coming in, private sector Americans, not the U.S. taxpayer. Private sector Americans coming in to help build out the energy grid. They need enormous amounts of electricity in North Korea. To work with them to develop infrastructure, all the things that the North Korean people need, the capacity for American agriculture to support North Korea so they can eat meat and have healthy lives. Those are the kind of things that if we get what it is the president has demanded, the complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization of North Korea, that the American people will offer in spades. Our eyes are wide open with respect to the risks, but it is our fervent hope that Chairman Kim wants to make a strategic change in the direction for his country and his people. And if he's prepared to do that, President Trump is prepared to assure that this can be a successful transition.
All right. Now, the key words of Secretary of State Pompeo are complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization. President Trump isn't just going to take Kim Jong-un at his word, in other words, like Bill Clinton did with his father, Kim Jong-il. If Kim Jong-un wants the crushing sanctions to be lifted and our military off his coast again, well, if he doesn't want that, then he's going to have to prove that he has completely destroyed his nuclear capability. This is what Ronald Reagan's policy of trust but verify means in action. All right, we're also following another developing story tonight from the Hill's John Solomon, that he'll join us in a little bit. This is getting serious attention. Look at the Drudge Report today, because it is a massive, huge deal. Here's the headline. Mueller may have a conflict, and it leads directly to a Russian oligarch. You can't make this up. And according to John Solomon, in 2009, then FBI Director Robert Mueller was directly involved in a plan with a Russian billionaire to rescue, by the way, and I don't oppose this, I will be clear, I'll explain later, to literally rescue an FBI agent and a CIA agent. His name was Robert Levinson. He's been missing now for 11 years. He was captured in Iran. In exchange for this, the billionaire was willing to spend $20 million of his own money as part of this operation, and he was given a special visa to enter the United States. Now, The difficult part comes out of the hypocrisy, because it turns out this is the same Russian billionaire the special counsel is now investigating in the Russian probe, but they kind of kept his name out of the indictment of Paul Manafort. Alan Dershowitz, Jonathan Turley are both telling John Solomon that this previous relationship with Robert Mueller is a massive conflict of interest as it relates to the Mueller probe. We did reach out to the special counsel for a statement, but they don't really like me over there. They didn't comment. Now, John Solomon will join us later with all these details. A stunning development tonight. And yet another setback for Mueller and his corrupt investigation. Get this. Remember, 2 Fridays ago, Judge T.S. Eliot III called out Mueller's probe as nothing more than a witch hunt to get to President Trump, to get to impeachment, to get to some charges brought against the president. Well, another judge is now picking apart Mueller's indictment of those Russian nationals. And tonight we have more incredible information that Mueller's investigation is imploding. And a Russian company that was indicted by the special counsel, remember, Mueller didn't think anyone was going to respond to this, is calling the charges baseless. And in court saying Mueller and his hacks haven't even shown that the company intentionally broke the law. And Law and Crime tonight, it's a website reporting that the attorney for this Russian company, he wants to see Mueller's secret grand jury instructions, which he would have a right to see. And Daily Wire is out with a report saying that the court transcripts, get this, it shows that Mueller indicted a Russian company that didn't exist at the time. And according to the Daily Wire, a lawyer for this company said, Your Honor, I think we're dealing with a situation of the government having indicted the proverbial ham sandwich. That company didn't exist as a legal entity during the time period alleged by the U.S. government. If at some later time they show to me that it does exist or it did exist, well, we would probably represent them. But for purposes of today, no, we don't represent them. Wow. Andy McCarthy has actually quoted as saying from National Review Online, one thing you never want to do is indict in a case that you're not prepared to try. And clearly Mueller's team was not prepared. They were caught flat-footed. And the entire investigation is literally falling apart in a spectacular fashion. And the mainstream media is not telling you any of this. And, of course, the rest of the deep state is also being put on notice tonight as they continue to be exposed. You saw the Wall Street Journal. I was off Friday. Unfortunately, Kim Strassel is raising serious concerns and questions about the possibility the FBI planting a mole inside the Trump campaign. Okay, what if it was Hillary? It's a stunning new development, especially in light of the FBI then later helping Hillary when we know it's incontrovertible. The evidence is overwhelming that she committed felonies and crimes and obstructed justice. And by the way, this is something that needs to be fully investigated. And that means the Department of Justice needs to get off their ass and send over all those subpoenaed documents. But it fits right into a pattern that's been playing out. We have seen severe FISA abuses, the FBI lying to multiple judges about the Clinton bought and paid for dossier with Russian sources paid for by and worked on by a foreign national. They got warrants to spy on a member of the Trump campaign. Then, of course, the rampant, ridiculous 350% uptick by the Obama administration in unmasking during the 2016 election year. Then we've got the criminal leaking that took place. Michael Flynn is only one example. His name was unmasked and then leaked raw intelligence to the news media. And, of course, that ended up in the case where we are now. It is beyond disturbing, and it's why this deep state, if we care about the rule of law, equal justice under the law, equal application of the law, and our Constitution, these people need to be held accountable. And some members of Congress are trying to do that. Senator Chuck Grassley is now demanding answers about Comey's conflicting testimony over Michael Flynn's interview with FBI agents. Remember, Comey told Congress he didn't think that Michael Flynn lied. But that's what Mueller ended up charging Flynn with. And then remember, this information, that was something that Rod Rosenstein and others at the DOJ, they fought like hell to keep redacted in the name of national security when clearly it had nothing to do with national security. And like they've been slow walking, redacting in the name of national security, they're just stonewalling. And the DOJ is deploying one tactic after another to try and prevent Congress from finding out the truth about how corrupt this Russia investigation has been from day one and the abuse of the FISA laws have been, and, of course, putting the fix in for Hillary Clinton. Now, the House Intel Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, then Trey Gowdy, they're now saying the DOJ is trying to discredit their investigation by using anonymous sources to attack a GOP staffer who helped expose surveillance abuses. This is pathetic. If our government uses the powerful tools of intelligence and turns them on us, we don't have a country anymore. And it proves that the DOJ clearly is hiding something. Rod Rosenstein begged Paul Ryan not to turn over information about FISA abuses. Instead of turning over the documents, Congress has a constitutional role of oversight. They're just attacking the congressman. All right, finally tonight, a revealing report from the Washington Compost. Trump's successes are so undeniable at this point that even the liberal mainstream media is struggling to deny and spin them. And now Democrats are really scared because their 17-point generic midterm congressional ballot lead has now disappeared. Even fake news CNN has a poll within the margin of error. And that's 1 point in a Reuters poll. And there's a reason that President Trump is racking up win after win after win on the economy, on foreign policy. Just look at the major accomplishments in the last week or two. You know, we secured the release of 3 American hostages. We didn't pay for it. We captured the top 5 most wanted ISIS leaders. We ended the horrific Iranian nuclear deal. We set a date for a summit with little Rocket Man in North Korea. The African-American unemployment rate is in an all-time low in this country. 14 states have an all-time low. Hispanic unemployment at an all-time low. Women in the workplace at an all-time low. And overall unemployment is at an all-time low since 2000. And the CNN poll shows that we have optimism in this country at an 11-year high. The Atlanta Federal Reserve is forecasting second quarter economic growth at a whopping 4.1%. The midterms are going to be President Trump's accomplishments, not this false, all this noise, all this narrative that the Democrats and your corrupt media have been pushing. And with reaction to all this news tonight, contributor Sarah Carter, investigative reporter, NRA TV contributor Dan Bongino, civil rights criminal defense attorney David Schoen. All of you have done phenomenal work. I thank you all. Sarah, we'll start with you. You had mentioned it on the program last Thursday. Really? We had a spy from the FBI within the Trump campaign, separate and apart from March 7th, 2017. On this program, you and John Solomon breaking the story about FISA abuse.
Well, it appears that there was an intelligence source, somebody connected to the Trump campaign that had worked with the CIA and the FBI. And it also appears that the FBI had approached this source that was connected to the Trump campaign and asked for information on the Trump campaign. I think this is really important because one of the things that was brought up today, just recently, was the fact that Paul Ryan and others have been screaming mad about the fact that they kept this from Congress. They kept this information from oversight. And this is the reason why Chairman Nunes was so adamant on retrieving the information on this intelligence source. But one of the things, Sean, this source is considered highly classified. So if this person was offering information to the FBI on previous cases, had worked with the FBI closely, it would be very dangerous to release that name without the authority of the national security apparatus.
Look at the efforts, David Schoen. Let's talk about that story just from the legal point of view, which is your area of expertise. But I guess more importantly, all of the legal issues that I'm raising, FISA abuse, unmasking, surveillance, no minimization, all of this, and then, of course, covering up and rigging an investigation into Hillary, it would seem that there should be a lot of people in America afraid tonight in terms of their legal jeopardy.
Absolutely, and having no confidence in the special counsel in a so-called investigation. Look, Sarah Carter is on top of this story. If it turns out there was a confidential source placed in an electoral campaign during the course of the election, it will be bigger than Watergate. But you're right. These are all tied together.
FISA abuse is already bigger than Watergate. They lied not to one FISA judge, 4, so they can get a one. And Rod Rosenstein signed off on one of those subsequent renewal applications. They never verified, they never corroborated it, which is not only the law, it's FBI protocol, and then they never told these judges where this information came from. Hillary Clinton, phony Russian sources by a foreign agent. Sorry, I'm mad.
And the common link that you have tied together is the matter of omission. They have not been straight with the FISA court. They haven't been straight clearly now in the Manafort case. This is going to have to come out. If there's a confidential source, there's no reason any longer, if you want to go to trial with Mr. Manafort, and you're not permitted to keep that confidential any longer.
And by the way, the Russian bot case is dead. They're not going to give these. They never thought that these people would ever respond. Mueller will have to drop it, in my opinion. David, do you agree with that?
Well, they've exercised their speedy trial right, so it's either put up or shut up at this point. And we're hearing remarkable things, that the wrong company possibly was indicted. That's the way, when you
can't make this up. Let me go to my friend Dan Bongino. On the political side, I just talked about the president's accomplishments, including Israel, North Korea, Iran. It's having Democrats, and this is a bad position for Democrats to be in, that for them to get their little power back that they crave so desperately to impeach the president, that means the economy has to fail, but the economy is thriving. That means foreign policy would have to fail. What a horrible position to be in for them.
Yeah, well, Sean, the Democrats have never had an agenda to run on. I mean, what's your agenda? Give us your money, give us your health care, and give us your kids in a bunch of broken public schools? Sean, all they have is the Mueller case right now. The Mueller case is collapsing. The case has been deeply conflicted from the start. Two of his prosecutors represented people in the Clinton orbit. One of them who was involved in the email scandal. We already know about Weissman. Yep. Yeah, Jeannie Rhee and Aaron Zebley. And also, Sean, one of the lawyers representing a source for Mueller, you're never going to believe this. In the case, one of the lawyers representing a Mueller source was Obama's White House counsel, Catherine Rummler.
You can't make it up. Last word, Sarah. We got to break. Sarah.
Well, I agree. And right now, Grassley, you know, with the Senate Judiciary Committee, is requesting all the documentation on Flynn. There's going to be a lot of developments in that, and they're asking for the actual tech cut records of the conversation between Flynn and Russian Ambassador Kislyak. It'll be interesting to see what
you
they
guys
come
have
up
been
with.
amazing. John Solomon's breaking report and breaking news. It's explosive. That's next. All right, joining us now with reaction to our breaking news and our monologue, the columnist from The Hill that actually broke this story is John Solomon. Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz is with us in studio. John, I got to begin with you. Mueller may have a conflict that leads directly to Russia. I might surprise some of my audience here. As FBI director, the efforts that they were using to actually help save a former FBI and a CIA guy, and we haven't seen this guy in 11 years, I am not concerned about that one bit. I don't care. I think any effort to save an American, and Robert Mueller and the FBI, I'm all for it. I want to be very clear. The issue becomes the hypocrisy of this, because this is the same Russian oligarch that they're using in the Manafort case, and they never pointed it out. So that's a problem for me. Not the little laws that were cited. There might be a violation of law, but I'm kind of glad they tried hard to save this guy. That's my natural gut.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the real question is the whole Russia collusion case is, did someone ask a favor of Russia, right? Did Donald Trump collude and try to get a favor? Well, 6 or 7 years before collusion was a twinkle in the public's imagination, the FBI asked a favor of this same oligarch, the oligarch that's now a client and a witness against potentially Paul Manafort, and there's no disclosure. We in the public don't know. It doesn't appear that the courts know.
Well, let me ask you, did the FBI and Mueller ever tell Congress that they had asked this oligarch?
Great question. I talked to the Senate and House Intelligence Committee chairman.
To fund this, by the way. They got the Russian oligarch to pay $25 million. Actually, part of me thinks it's genius. But then don't use the same guy against Manafort and don't mention that you know the guy.
Yeah, I think that's right. I talked to the Senate Intelligence, House Intelligence Committee chairman from that time, Bill Nelson of Florida, Mike Rogers of Michigan. They both said that we were never briefed, and they were surprised to learn that such an operation occurred without Congress being informed.
All right. I know people are talking about the legality of this, and there's a specific law, the Anti-Deficiency Act, which prohibits the government from accepting voluntary services. You know what? That, to me, is total BS. This is like the superfluous, idiotic bureaucracy. I want that American saved. I want us fighting to save that American. So I'm not faulting Mueller for that. I'm applauding him, actually, which surprises some people. It's the hypocrisy. And they didn't mention that this is the same oligarch in the Manafort case. They purposely kept his name out.
Well, and Sean, your show and the great reporting John has done has demonstrated that this is but one conflict of interest. The Mueller probe is an orgy of conflicts of interest, and any one of them taken independently could potentially be brushed aside, but viewed in their totality, it shows how corrupt and biased this investigation is. Also an important point on this oligarch, Deripaska. Senator Tom Cotton asked a question in February as to whether or not Deripaska was involved in the drafting of the dossier with Christopher Steele.
Was he?
And Christopher Wray would not answer that question in open session.
We're going to pull that tape.
So
I didn't
very,
know.
very important that this very oligarch could have had a role in telling lies about Donald Trump, and that we still don't know that as the American people.
All right, you do point out not only the hypocrisy, the double standard, what clearly seems to be, John, something they're trying to hide in this case. What other issues surround this that you discovered? Because you cite dozens of people here, or at least a dozen or 14 people in your article as sources that we've never known this before.
Yeah, listen, the people that first approached me were Robert Mueller's old comrades at the FBI who thought it was odd that they had asked this favor of Deripaska, and then he's missing from this case, even though there's a lot of evidence connecting it to him. I want to go back to something the congressman said. When you wake up tomorrow morning, I think you're going to know the answer to what Deripaska did with the FBI in relationship to the dossier. Stay tuned tomorrow morning. You're going to learn something very important about Deripaska and the dossier.
Did Deripaska have something to do with the dossier? Mr. Solomon, give us a preview, sir. Stop with the teasing. That's my job. I tease next segment.
He didn't have anything to do with the dossier. It may be what he said about its allegations that'll be the news.
You know anything about this?
Only that Senator Cotton seems to be on the trail, and that we didn't get answers in open hearings. That certainly raises a lot of questions.
By the way, people, John, have been asking where you've been on the show. You've had a lot going on. You weren't feeling well. Welcome back. We're glad to have you back.
Thanks. Glad to be on.
Congressman, good to see you.
Yes, and I know we're all praying for a speedy recovery of our fantastic First Lady as well. So many millions of Americans joining us.
Amen. Absolutely. She's been amazing, and the media's been so vicious to her. I'm sick of it. Good to see you in studio. All right, when we come back, the Secretary of State, amazing interview that Mike Pompeo, he gives us a glimpse into what it's like to meet little rocket man Kim Jong-un. We'll check in with Sebastian Gorka and Geraldo Rivera and so much more. Stay with us. All right, as we were just discussing, First Lady Melania Trump undergoing a procedure at Walter Reed Hospital earlier today to treat a kidney condition. Joining us live from Walter Reed with more news is Fox News correspondent Kristen Fisher. Kristen, what's the latest on the First Lady?
Hey, Sean. Well, the White House says that everything went well. She's recovering and she's in good spirits. But keep in mind, she's expected to stay at the hospital at Walter Reed for the rest of the week. So anytime you're in the hospital for a week, that's a pretty serious thing. Now, the vice president says that this was a procedure that was planned a long time ago, but the public and the press only found out about it after it was over. And they found out about it through a statement that the White House put out. It reads in part, quote, this morning, First Lady Melania Trump underwent an embolization procedure to treat a benign kidney condition. The procedure was successful, and there were no complications. Now, we don't know exactly what the condition is, but embolization is typically used to treat tumors. And in this case, it would appear, based on that statement, that this was a benign tumor. What happens is they take a catheter, they put it in an artery, and then they inject particles into the blood vessels surrounding the tumor, which essentially cuts off the blood supply and kills it. So that's what happened here, and by all accounts, it was a success. As for the president, Sean, he came and visited his wife just a few hours ago here at Walter Reed. And the reason he didn't come here in the morning when the procedure was happening, we're told, is because he didn't want to tip off the press. And of course, anywhere the president goes, the press pool follows. So clearly the White House wanted to keep this a secret. The First Lady, of course, is a very private person. And, you know, it really is remarkable that on a day when President Trump is tweeting about leaks, this is one thing that did not get out before it was supposed to. And, of course, everyone here is wishing the First Lady a speedy and full recovery tonight, Sean.
All right, Kristen, thank you. And I would argue it's none of their business ahead of time, and our thoughts and prayers are with the First Lady. Now, last year, President Trump took heat from the left-wing mainstream Destroy Trump media for referring to North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un as little rocket man. Remember this.
And by the way, Rocket Man should have been handled a long time ago. He should have been handled a long time ago by Clinton. I won't mention the Republicans, right? But by Obama. Why did this, this is a different time. This should have been handled 8 years ago and 4 years ago. And honestly, and 15 years ago, and 20 years ago, and 25 years ago. This shouldn't be handled now, but I'm going to handle it because we have to handle it.
We remember at the time, well, people in the media criticized the president's tough rhetoric, but it has clearly worked. And now the summit is set for next month. During an interview on Face the Nation, our new Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, was asked to describe what struck him about the North Korean dictator. Here's what he said.
What struck me about him, he is very knowledgeable in the sense of he knows the files. He's very capable of engaging in complex set of discussions. When I ask him a question about something that's a little off, he answers it. There's no note cards. It is Chairman Kim, in this case, interacting with me directly, having a robust discussion about what the outlines of a successful negotiation between our two countries might ultimately be.
Here with reaction, former deputy assistant to the president, Fox News national security strategist, Sebastian Gorka, and author of the bestseller. He's a friend. We don't always agree, but he is my brother, Geraldo Rivera. Good to see both of you. Let me start with you, Geraldo, on this, because I've always been a fan. Pompeo's a genius. I've been a fan of his for a long time. I'm glad he's our Secretary of State. And what he says to me is very impressive. But think about this. Trump calls him Little Rocket Man. He shows military force. He puts sanctions in place. The rockets stop being fired. The world is now safer. 3 hostages are released. He crosses the DMZ, and we're talking about denuclearizing or denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. You know what? Good story.
I'll say, when you consider how much we've traveled since the Olympics, just since the Olympics, Sean.
If I was a diplomat, I'd say I was cautiously optimistic. But I'm not a diplomat, and I'm not very diplomatic. So let me say I am ecstatic by these developments.
No kidding. We know you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's it. I feel that, we've moved so far. And Pompeo is a very nuts and bolts kind of guy. It's not pie in the sky. It's not just wishful thinking on the part of President Trump. These are real, meaningful steps. The release of the hostages, the announcement that in 2 weeks he'll be blowing up the tunnels to his testing facilities. The fact that he's agreeing to dismantle, not only dismantle, but ship those component parts to Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I mean, it is spectacular. Sean. If this is indeed what is going to happen, this is the biggest move toward peace since the founding of the United Nations.
That and literally the alliance that has been created by the president, Israel, the Jordanians, the Egyptians, the Saudis, the Emirates against Iranian hegemony. No cargo planes of cash, Dr. Gorka. A huge difference.
It's amazing what difference one election can make, Sean. It truly is. These are the kinds of results you'd be proud of at the end of a 2-term presidency. I was in touch with Mike Pompeo today. Spirits are very, very high. We have to be cautious. Remember, this is a dictatorship. This is a regime that has kept its people prisoner. But at the end of the day, you put these things on a whiteboard in just 15 months. All of these things have been achieved. It would have been remarkable to have a summit on Korean peace in 8 years' time, not next week or the week after. So stunning, from the 70th birthday of the modern Israeli state today to the opening of the embassy, the hits just keep on coming.
Geraldo, I will say this, between that, pulling out of the Iranian deal, the great news on the economy, everything in between. I mean, all the noise, I argue, is not going to mean a thing when it comes to the 2018 election. I believe this election will be about the economy doing so much better, a world being a safer place, a president keeping his promises, and a desire to roll back tax cuts and impeach this president will be on the ballot in every congressional district.
You know, it's interesting that you say that. I agree. And you know who else agrees? The New York Times Week in Review had an article that I thought was very, very telling. They said that liberals are so smug. They know it all. They are so sure that they have God on their side and that Trump is the devil incarnate, that their attitude is going to lead them down the primrose path. President Trump is doing a spectacular job with the economy, as you mentioned, African-American unemployment, Hispanic unemployment, female retail unemployment, all indicators of optimism, everything pointed up. If he can now deliver this a true denuclearized Korean Peninsula,
unbelievable.
the clock, the atomic clock that ticks toward midnight will have to be set back 5-10 minutes. It is really a profound step in the right direction, Sean.
We give Dr. Gorka the last word.
Sean, Geraldo, the president makes promises, he keeps promises, and this is what making America great again looks like. And we're going to have 7 more years of it, and then 8 years of President Pence.
Well, what about President Geraldo? I thought he was running.
What about President Hannity? I hear he's next in line.
Everyone writes these stories about me. Nobody knows me. All right. Well, you two know me. Thank you.